Hi, my name is Alessandro Cangeloso and that's a video tutorial coming from cgcookie.com for Max Cookie. Today we'll talk about something interesting, and I mean, you know that we have different rendering engine in 3ds Max, and sometimes we need to use different rendering engine for different passes over a scene, and we have to understand how to play with something like that. So for this special case I will use a scene we prepared some months ago. You see there we have an interior, and I will do something inside the scene to play with other objects. So let's say that this pass is rendered using, for example, VRay, and we like to add something, for example, rendered using let's say iRay, or for example mental ray, and we like obviously to have these objects perfectly working inside the scene, and we need to reflect also the environment. The workflow we are proposing, it's just one way to achieve this result. Obviously there are similar ways or different ways to do something like that, and it happens, and it let's say depend on the engine you are using and what we are trying to achieve. For example, at the end of the video we'll see how to merge something rendered using for example film effects and using the skyline inside the scene. So we have to do something to match the lighting. So that's our scene. It's rendered, and we don't need to re-render the scene. We need just to add some object. The first thing, you know, doing something like that is like the composition of real life footage and 3D CGI stuff. Our first problem is that we have to replicate the lighting, and we have to, for example, match shadows and cast shadows over the 3D environment there. And we need the right reflection from this point of view. So let's imagine that we like to put something, for example, there. So the first thing we can do is to place something. Let's say that we create something really simple. So let's imagine some geometry like a sunflower box. So let's do something really simple, and let's move it there. And it is just to know where we will stay with the our environment there. So another thing we need is to set this one as not renderable for the moment, just for the moment. So general, renderable. Okay, then we need a render. We need a spherical render from this point of view. So something that we can do to speed up the rendering. Let's say that we have just 16 and 1, and let's say that there we have a not so high quality, and for, let's see, the camera we need no depth of field, so select camera, and let's go to deactivate the depth of field. So then we have to see what we have to do there inside the camera. We need a spherical camera. So if we go to, let's say that we have no anti-alias just for the moment, and let's say that we have something like 500 for 200, and let's say that we have 25 and 24 and 24. If we go to render, it will take just a little bit to prepare the basic scene, and then let's remove also the displacement, because it will be used just as a map for illumination and reflection. So back at the rendering, Okay, we have to adjust the spherical, so let's put the camera there, and let's say that this one can be moved, and we move it to the point where we have the object, just to have something more precise. Okay, let's select the camera target and we can move it. So let's say that our point of view is this one. So let's see what happens if we try to render now the spherical camera. Okay, that's just the distortion. Obviously I'd like to make something different now. Okay, let's stop. So the first thing we have to do is to go inside the render, and inside the camera we have to override the fog, because we like to render at 360 degrees all around our camera. So if we go to render now and we check the area, you see that we are rendering the entire environment seen by this point of view, and that's really similar to an HDR map. So let's wait for the calculation just to see if the quality is okay. Okay, you see that the quality is nice, so we can render something bigger. Let's say that we render at 2K. It's not so much, but it's enough for our purpose, because it's just a tutorial. You can use higher parameters, obviously. So obviously you can. So let's render with the setting, and let's see. Okay, so you can use obviously another scene you have, and we'll use this one as a map just to understand how to play with it. So let's go with the render. It will take a little bit. So that's our render. Obviously quality is not so high, but we can use it without problem. So let's go in our folder, 3ds Max render, using different render workflow. Let's copy everything. Okay, and save the scene. Sorry, and save the map. So let's go to save this one as HDR. Let's call it HDR. Okay, let's use RGB. So we have this map. Now we need to create something inside the scene, and let's imagine that we are creating something using another rendering engine. So to do something like that, the first thing is to remove, so you can use this map, this scene. I will remove the lights, let's go to pick also the light. And we can remove it. Okay, so another thing I like to do is to have this one just with a basic material, so reset material, and let's say that actually we have just this one. So our scene is really really simple, and let's imagine that we'll use, let's say VRay for rendering. So let's save this one, and let's go in the tutorials. Okay, and save. So that's our basic scene. Let's see what happens if we like to start playing with the objects. So you see, for example, that's our first object, and this one, it's really simple. Let's do something like stays there, and it is not so big. Maybe it is a piece of plastic, nothing so important, with a little bit less fillet. Okay, and let's say that we have, for example, a teapot. So you know, we are using obviously really simple objects just to understand how the workflow can work. Let's use the shell modifier, so 0 and just a little bit inside, and let's say that we have also a sphere. Let's say 64. So our scene is this one. Let's say that we use another material for this one, and let's give just a color just to have something. Okay, if we go to render, obviously we have a gray environment with no lighting and just this object. So the first thing I like to do is to do something more complex, and is to render inside this environment. So this object needs to be matte. So we go there and we select the matte shadows reflection. That's our environment, and we say for the moment, yes, it's received shadows, but it will be not important for the moment. It will receive also a matte occlusion, and for the moment we have no reflection. So back to works there. And if we go to render, let's say maybe 720, you see that's the actual result, and I like to see this one must be renderable. So actually it's really simple. Let's go back to the rendered view, and if we go, you see that we have also the global illumination for this object, but we have no more objects inside the scene. So back there, what I like to do is to have the right reflection. So first of all, let's say that this one is a chrome. Let's assign, and we use an arc design, and let's use a chrome, because actually I'm not taking care about the complex stuff for shading. So that's the chrome material, and for this one we can use, for example, a simple metal, and let's say that this one has an arc design, and we can use, let's say, maybe let's go for a car paint, and let's tweak there to have VRay also for this one. So, and the last one is a plastic, so let's say plastic, we can assign it, and we'll use an arc design, and we go for gray color. We have a little bit of reflectivity, but we'll use a really high glossiness, so let's go for 35 for the reflection, and then let's go to check the IRR, and we say that the IRR is 1/6. So that's our scene. If we go back to render, our actual result is this. You see that the quality is really not so high, because we are simply creating a stupid material with no shadows casting and nothing more. So first of all, we need the lighting, and the lighting in this case must be done using the skylight. So why we are using the skylight? Let's go to render again so we can understand why we are using the skylight. We are trying to create the lighting coming from a rendered image using the HDR map, so it is normal that we'll use the skylight. Why we have no illumination? The problem is that the skylight is illuminating also the other objects. So in this case we need the light coming inside. So for example, in this case, you know that we have no interaction between those objects and all the other stuff. We have interaction just with the floor. So we can let's say select the floor and then our three objects. Then we can say select invert, and we can put this stuff over a layer. Let's call it environment. We go to work on the basic layer and we can remove this stuff. If we go to render now, obviously we have the lighting because we have no shadow casting from the environment. So what we need now is to have, let's say that the skylight, let's go there and select and move to the other layer and hide the environment. Okay, let's save again. So now we need to have a texture, so we go there, and something that can be done is to go inside this map and pick a bitmap, and we go in our folder and we select our HDR map. Let's say okay, so that's the map. Let's say that we are using a spherical environment with no blurring. In this case we can move the map there and we can make another test render. So now we need to use this map also as reflection. We can just go inside the environment and in the material editor, and we can copy this one as the environment map as an instance. Then if we go to render, you see that we have the map as the background, but obviously it is not inside the alpha channel, and we have the right reflectivity over the meshes. We have just a problem, and the problem is, so we need not to see this one because you see it is reflected over the environment. So we can pick the ground plane, object properties, and we can say no visible to reflection or refraction. Then if we go to render, you see that we have no more map inside the object, but we have the shadows there. So that's nice because you see we have the right illumination. A problem that can happen is to have no occlusion there, you see, but you can render a separate path with occlusion. So in this case we need obviously to render also from this point of view to be sure that we are rendering from the right point of view. So let's save this one and let's create a camera from this point of view. So view, create camera, and save again. Then I go to create a render from this point of view on the other project, just to be sure we can make a test comp. So we have the frame ready, so let's go there and let's use an input inside Fusion. Let's go over the desktop in the folder where we are creating the tutorial, and we have the background. That's our background. Let's go to fit. Then in 3ds Max we can go to render, and we render at 900. So if we go to check the alpha is this one, so let's render, and let's say that we have objects VRay.tiff 16-bit colors, store alpha channel and pack bits. Back in Fusion, if we go there, we use another loader, we use the image there. Let's go for composite, merge. This one is the back and this one is the foreground. So that's, you see, we have a little bit of problem over the maps there, but it's not a problem, it's not a big issue. Let's change the gamma, because we are working with a gamma on the JPEG, and let's use a color correction. Connect there and there, and there we say that the gamma is 2.2. okay, so we have the right illumination there. Inside the import, okay, post multiply by alpha, so we have the right thing there. So you see that there we have the right shadows over the ground and the right illumination there with the right definition for the reflection, but I like to have a nicer result. So first of all, I like to change a little bit the material there. Let's say that the glossiness is 0.75, so we have a little bit of glossiness over the metal. And another thing I like to do is to have just a little bit more illumination. So let's close and let's select this one, and let's say maybe 1.25, and in the material use it there for the shadows. Let's go to see the received shadows, ambient shadows intensity. We can, for example, say maybe 0.6. Let's render again and save. I will see if the result is better than the previous one. Let's go there, and inside the material, inside the file, let's repeat. We have a little bit of illumination, but we have still the shadow contacts a little bit too visible. Let's work a little bit over the ambient occlusion, and let's say that we have 16 there, and let's say that the strength is a little bit less, and let's see how it looks. Save and back in Fusion. Let's reload. Okay, you see that is a little bit less visible, but we need less visibility, so I think we can go for something like that. Okay, so something that can be done is also to add the ambient occlusion to the object. So for example, you can go there in the Chrome, and you can have an ambient occlusion path done directly over the material, or for example you can add it as a separate path. In this case, the first thing we do is to render using the high quality, so 1:16, and we'll use the Mitchell and save and render. The workflow we are following using the VRay is obviously the same also for the other rendering engine. So for example, you can apply this one to be used, for example, with final render or with a scanline. You have just to change the shader you are using or the way you are applying it. So for example, you see that now the shadows are a little bit better and are more similar to the other one inside the environment. So something that is needed now is to have an ambient occlusion over the object. So what you can do is just to let's save everything, and then we create an ambient occlusion path. Let's say that this shader is an AO, it's self-illuminated, and this one use an AO map, discardable map, and let's say that we can use something like that. And in the processing, material override, and we use this one. Okay, let's see what happened. Okay, you see that we have it. In this case, for example, now we have the problem because we are using the shadows, the ambient occlusion shadows over the environment too. So we have to do something more. Let's say that we have the object AO, and we can use a JPEG. So now we need a mask, and to do a mask, we can do something really simple. You can, for example, use this one and say to this object that is not renderable. So in this case we have a white color with self-illumination. If we go to render, we can remove the final gather and we can remove the material override. So if we go to render, you see that we have the tree sphere, but we have to use also a different setup. So we have environment, and there we have a black color, and we can say, for example, just the alpha. Let's say object matte dot. We can use also the JPEG. So let's go back to our saved version. So inside there we need an input with the ambient occlusion, and we can use a composite merge. So that's the background and the ambient occlusion is the foreground. So if we go there, we have to say to use the multiply. But you see that now we have again the ambient occlusion over the ground too. So we need the loader. We load the matte, and we use this one as mask for the merging. So we have to convert this one because it's a bitmap. So bitmap, we have to move this one there and then put inside there. So we have a problem over the map there. Okay, now it is working, and we have to decide how much we have. So you see we can decide how much usage of the ambient occlusion we have to use. So in this case, for example, we can go for something like that, and maybe we can just this one is the matte. We can just the focus a little bit, so let's go for blur. Let's use blur, connect there, and we can blur a little bit, then move it there. And so if we blur, let's say that we go for something like that, so it is higher, and then we use no blur there, so we can use in this way. And then let's say that we use a little bit more, so something like that. It's just a really simple setup. So save as, and let's save inside our folder as tutorial. And let's copy the name from there. Okay, so that's the thing. Obviously inside 3ds Max we have the possibility also to, let's go back to our saved version, and that's our scene. We can see another feature we have there, and I'm talking about the reflection, because you know our power element, for example, is reflective inside the scene there, but we have no reflectivity for those objects. We can simulate something, so we can go there, we can say to use reflection. If we go to render using this setup, we see that we have the reflectivity of those objects over the ground plane. We need to tweak a little bit, obviously, because we need less reflectivity, and we need to use also the glossiness. So first of all, let's go to have less. Let's render just a piece. Okay, you see that now the reflection is less visible, but I think it is still too much. Let's render again. Now it is less visible, and let's see the map. You see that the map contains inside the alpha also the reflection. And now let's go to have a glossiness. You see that it's starting to have glossiness. It is still too visible, so let's go for really heavy glossiness. And I think we can also have less reflectivity. Let's try in this way. So let's render the entire image, render, and we'll try to compose one. Then we'll see, for example, how to add a really simple thing done with the film effects, just to see that using other rendering engine can follow the same way. So let's say that now we have VRay, let's say with reflection. Okay, save. Let's go back there, and let's try to use the other one. So we'll use a node, let's say Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and this one is the other one, so it's with a reflection. Let's connect there. Okay, and you see that we have the reflectivity. In this way we have the possibility to understand that we have to use a higher level of reflectivity. So let's imagine that we have, for example, something like that. And this in this version there, you can also think about using the bump map, so you can change how the reflection are used over the map, and that's really simple. You have just to use the wood texture used for the original pavement. So in this way you can have distortion done by the bump mapping too. So let's say now with reflectivity, yes, let's go back there, let's reload, and now you see are more visible the reflectivity and are similar to the other one. Okay, so now I think we can also have, in this case, this one, but I think we can use, let's go there. I like to use just a little bit from this one, and then I use another bump, so merge. This one will be the back, the foreground is again the ambient occlusion, there we'll have again the multiply, so you see it's really dark. Let's try to have a lower one, so we can have a little bit over the reflection, a little bit over the other thing. So okay, let's save again. So we have also the reflectivity calculated by the ambient occlusion. So you see that it's starting to work really nice. Obviously you can tweak it and trying to achieve a better result. So in this case we just saw how to merge two renderings done with different rendering engines, VRay and VRay. Obviously, as I said to you before, you can do the same using the scanline or final render or whatever else. But it will be another special case when you have something like volumetric effects, and they're talking about, for example, film effects. Some stuff will be done in the same way as we done actually, but it will take a little bit to talk about it, because we have to see how these the smoke will interact with the objects, how the shadows will interact with the environment, and how the reflection will work. So we'll prepare a tutorial just to talk about volumetric effects and different rendering engine, just to see how to work with it. And at the moment I think we can be over with this tutorial, and I think that for the moment that's all. So I hope to see you back on Max Cookie to check for new tutorial coming from cgcookie.com. Bye.